Hey everyone, it's Isabella. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. And today we're going to talk all about books that I would recommend to those who are just getting started in their reading journey. I was a little hesitant to film this because books and taste in books are so incredibly what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for. Subjective. That's the word I'm looking for. They're subjective. So I kind of find it hard to recommend books for quote unquote beginners because I'm like, if I recommend you a bad book and you go read it, I don't want that to put you off reading. It's a lot of pressure. So I've kind of picked a couple books from a bunch of different genres and you guys can decide what you like. I personally have been reading consistently for about 3 years. I think this is my 3rd year. I read little bits and bobs in high school and stuff, but it actually being a hobby for 3 years. And I still love to watch these videos because I find you can find a lot of easy books to read, which is perfect when you're in a reading slump, which will happen, but that's a topic for another day. So I watch these and I'm not necessarily new to reading. So if you're not new to reading, I'm hoping you could still get some book recommendations because these books I loved. I'm gonna start off, gosh, what book do I start off with? Okay, I'll start off, this is the first book that I picked out and I was like, this has to be on the list because I feel like it's the #1 book that I would recommend to those who were into Harry Potter. I was not a Harry Potter girly when I was younger. I never watched the movies and I never read the books. I'm currently reading through the books and watching the movies. I think I'm on the unpopular side. Actually, I don't know if this is popular or unpopular. I prefer the movies. I think they're next level. It's insane that they managed to create such fantastic movies, but I prefer the movies. I'm working my way through the books, but I'm going to be completely honest, I'm finding it very lackluster. That being said, if you were a fan of Harry Potter, or if you just want a really magical book that is going to completely transform you into a different world, you need to pick up Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is actually a trilogy and I've yet to read the 3rd book because I simply don't want this series to end, and I don't think I've ever actually done that before in any series. So this first of all, the cover just shows how magical it is. It's about a little girl. Her name is Morrigan Crow. She's set to die on her 12th, 11th birthday. Is it her 12th? It doesn't say. 11th or 12th birthday. I can't remember which one it is. And then on her birthday, she's whisked away into this magical world called Nevermore, and she has to go through these trials to be a part of Nevermore. It is so much more than that. That's a really terrible explanation. I'll just read the back because I feel like that was a bad description. It says, Morrigan Crow is cursed. Born on an unlucky day, she is blamed for all local misfortunes from hailstorms to heart attacks. And worst of all, the curse means that Morrigan is doomed to die at midnight on Eventide. But as Morrigan awaits her fate, a strange and remarkable man named Jupiter North appears. Chased by black smoke hounds and shadowy hunters on horseback, he whisks her way to a secret, magical city called Nevermore. To stay in the safety of Nevermore for good, Morrigan will need to pass 4 difficult and dangerous trials, or she'll have to leave the city and confront her deadly fate. It has the magic, it has the found family, it has the magical school type setting, it is all there. The magical town. It is fantastic. I would really recommend, if you're getting into reading, start with this book. It is middle grade, but I kid you not, it is one of the best books I've read. Quickly, I know there's birds, I'm sorry. Well, you know what, I'm not sorry. Enjoy the nature, okay? I'm gonna continue with the fantasy theme. I do have some thrillers and romances in here as well, and a classic. So there is other options. If you're looking for a fantasy with vampires, I highly recommend Serpent and the Wings of Night. I just read this recently on my Kindle. It is on Kindle Unlimited and I think it is fantastic and it is definitely beginner friendly in my opinion. I flew through it in I think 2 or 3 days and it is a fairly long book. Keep that in mind. It is I think around 500-ish pages, I think. Was it? I don't even remember. Maybe it was only 3. No, I feel like it was bigger. I don't know how long it was. I think it was a bigger book though, but it definitely did not feel like that. It was fast paced. We have the main character, Araya. I've been hearing people pronounce her name Araya. I don't know. I say Araya, but whatever. Main character, she is human in a vampire world, and obviously it's very dangerous for her. She enters something called the Kajari, which is where her and a bunch of vampires, she is the only human. They essentially fight to the death in these trials, and whoever wins gets to essentially have a wish granted by this goddess Nyaxia, sorry. There is a romance, it's not the main plot point. I loved it. It definitely has that Hunger Games feel, so I'm not going to recommend Hunger Games because again, that I just feel like it's everywhere and it is known to be a beginner friendly book, but it is similar to Hunger Games because it has that Kajari, which is essentially the Hunger Games. So I would recommend that book. Another book that I would recommend, this one is YA. That one, Serpent in the Wings of Night, is adult, I believe. This is YA, Defy the Night by Bridget Kamara. I think it's YA. I'm assuming. I read this. I hadn't read the second book yet because I loved it so much that I'm scared. Can you see the theme here? I love Bridget Kamara. She's one of my favorite authors. I read the Cursebreaker series first, but I know that one is very like controversial in terms of people's opinions. I know this one is highly loved, and I feel like I could see personally the growth in Bridget's writing, so I'm gonna recommend this book. I'm just gonna read the back because it's honestly been a while since I read it. In a kingdom where In a kingdom where sickness stalks the streets and only the richest can afford a cure, King Harriston and his brother Prince Coric are forced to rule with an iron fist. Tessa Cade is a masked outlaw marked for death, but she likes it that way. Together with the mysterious, handsome Weston, she robs from the rich to help the poor, distributing medicine to those who need it most. As it becomes clear that the only way to save her people is to assassinate the king, Tessa faces a deadly mission that will take her to the dark heart of the kingdom and force her to work with the very people she intended to destroy. It's fantastic. It is a staple YA fantasy, and I think it is just a wonderful place to start. The Cursebreaker series, which is on the back, I would also recommend that. So whatever series interests you. Cursebreaker is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, very lightly though. It kind of fades away from that point as it goes on, as most do. The next book, I was hesitant to include this because I feel like it's, okay, I'm going to include it. I'm going to include it because this is a book that I read when I was a beginner and it really less moved me, but it is slow paced and that's the only thing. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is like the pretty edition, like so pretty. I don't want to take this wrapper off because I don't want to wreck it. But anyway, this is about a girl named Addie who is about to marry someone she does not want to marry. So she goes out and she prays after dark, which you're not meant to do in this world. And is he a demon? He's technically like a demon, right? Like is that how you would describe him? A demon, a devil. She makes a deal with the devil, basically. And she gets to live forever, which means she can run away from that life. The catch is that every single person she meets forgets her, so nobody remembers her until one day we meet Henry, who does remember her. People say it's slow paced. I can kind of see that. I didn't really think that when I was reading it, but looking back, it probably is. So I'd recommend this. Just keep in mind, this isn't a book that I would necessarily recommend binging in a day. This is a book that I would really take my time with and just soak up the story because it is just, it just warms my heart. This is the only book I think I've ever read that's a standalone that I wish was a duology, in my opinion. Like, I'd love to see what happened after that ending. I know that's kind of like the mysterious aspect, but I just want more. Now I'm going to recommend, we'll go into romance. Okay, let's jump into romance. I'm going to obviously mention my favorite romance. That is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Oh, I love this book. This is like top tier, okay, top tier. I read this first by my library and I loved it, and obviously now I have like several copies of it. So good. It's about January Andrews and Augustus. They hate each other. As you do. Well, they're rivals because they're both authors. January is a romance author and Augustus is a literary author. Yes. So they're both on writer's block, and something happens where they kind of end up in a situation where they're living next to each other. And so they decide to swap genres to help their writer's block. And a lot happens. And let me tell you, there's this one scene in here that has something to do with like a cupboard. I read this like literally right when I started like 3 years ago. It has never left my brain. It is adult. It's adult. And it does have a grief element, so it isn't a fluffy read. This is not a fluffy read. If you are looking for a fluffy read though, I do have a recommendation. The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Now, this I did read a good year or so ago, so I actually can't remember if there's any like darker elements in it, but I don't think there is. And I also feel like this is adult. I feel like it's adult. But it's not like, it's not about grief or anything crazy like that. I can't remember if there's anything like else in this book that is heavy, but I don't think there is. I'm currently reading Weather Girl by this author as well. Would highly recommend that book too. That one definitely does have some mental health rep in it, but it's done so good. This, see, I don't want to call it a fluffy romance in case it isn't, but when I thought of fluffy romance, I picked this up. So that being said, I do not read a lot of romance. I'm trying to get into the genre, okay? I'm trying. This is about two co-hosts on like this radio show thing, and they decide to fake being exes. So it's like fake dating, but fake exes for this like talk show, and it ends up being really successful, and it's following them. They do not like each other. Can you see a theme here? I'm not about that friends to lovers, okay? I don't think I could make a beginner-friendly book without mentioning Colleen Hoover. I wasn't going to because I know everyone talks about her, but genuinely she's what got me into reading. And I've read a lot of her books. Some of them I hated. Confess or Be Perfect. I'm looking at you, babe. I'm looking at you. But I loved this particular book, and this is a book that I would recommend to a beginner. I would not recommend reading It Ends With Us to beginners. I see so many people online reading It Ends With Us as like one of their first books, and I'm just like, look, it's a great book, but anyway. This book, however, it is obviously still sad because hello, it's Colleen Hoover, but it's criminally underrated, and that is Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, of course. This I originally read on my Kindle. Loved it. I feel like it was one of the first books. Actually, no, I didn't read this on my Kindle. I read this on just like my library app on my phone. And immediately, like, actually, that's a lie. I didn't immediately buy this book because they were coming out with a recover, and I actually really love this. I'm gonna be honest, I hate most of Colleen Hoover's new covers. They're just not my vibe, but this is definitely my vibe, especially because it's got the swell. If you've read it, you'll know. This follows Bea and Samson. Oh my gosh. You know what? It's not even the relationship in this that like makes me happy. It's just the story. It's the plot. It's the setting. This is a summer read, okay? You want a summer read? This. I would say this is way more of a summer read than beach read. People just pick up beach read because it says beach read. This is the summer read you're looking for. It's literally set at the beach. She goes to live with her dad, who she doesn't have a healthy, or not healthy, she doesn't have a close relationship with her dad. And she literally, it's like a house on the beach type of vibe. Grew up in poverty and low-key neglect, had a really bad upbringing with her mother. And like I said, she goes to her dad's house, who is very rich and has a, I don't know if it's a wife or just a girlfriend, has a partner, I believe. And it's just a very different dynamic. It's all about the dynamics. Like, she grew up this way and then she went to live like this, and it's a very like, oh, I'm not used to this type of thing. The little like tagline here says, damaged people recognize other damaged people. It's like a club you don't want a membership to. Yeah, this is a sad girl book, but I don't think it is a super heavy book. Like, I would say It Ends With Us is a heavy book. I do not think personally that this was as heavy. However, it all depends on your personal, I don't know, what you like and your personal preference, because I hated All Your Perfects because that is like a trigger book in like, that book made me not happy, okay? But that's just a personal thing because the plot of that book is my worst nightmare. So anyway, I'd highly recommend Heartbones. Continuing on with the Colleen Hoover train, I'm only gonna put one more book in here. I was tossing up between two, but I ended up picking up this one, and that is Layla. Verity is a very popular book as well by this author, which I also loved that book. I'm picking Layla though because just like Heartbones, I think it is underrated, and I feel like it's one of her most messed up but in the best way books. Like, these books are masterpieces and no one's talking about them. Like, come on. This follows Layla in Leeds, and an accident occurs that ends up really messing up Layla, okay? So Leeds takes Layla to this bed and breakfast that they went to when they first met. But Layla's just very different. She's acting different. She's not Layla. She's not acting like Layla. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Read the book. I am loving this stack. This is a really fun video. Okay, I think I have 2 books left, I think. The next book is a book I feel like a lot of people read in middle school or primary school. I didn't. Or high school. It'd probably be high school, hey. Anyway, I didn't read this book until I was an adult, and I read a couple of his works, and this one's by far my favorite, and that is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Everyone's like, The Fault in Our Stars this, The Fault in Our Stars that. This is where it's at, babe. This is where it's at. I owned at one point like 5 copies of this book, and I literally had to evaluate, like, Isabella, you do not need 5 copies of this book. I do have 2 though. One annotated version and one non-annotated version. So if you ever need to borrow this book, let a girl know. This follows Aza. That's how I pronounce her name, okay? Aza. I say Aza. And she has OCD. And this is basically, I feel like I would describe it like a character study of Aza living with OCD. And it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. But it is essentially just following her in her journey. I did highlight. Let me see if I can find a highlighted page. Like, I highlighted whole paragraphs that I'm just like, oh my gosh. You give your thoughts too much power, Aza. Thoughts are only thoughts. They are not you. You do belong to yourself even when your thoughts don't. Aza, you're going to survive this. Love is not a tragedy or a failure, but a gift. Oh, I feel like I need to reread this book for like the 5th time. It's just so good. It's so good. If you need a book that's gonna pick you up a little bit, yes. And it also is really, it talks a lot about therapy in this, which made me happy. Okay, the last book on this list is a classic. And I picked this book because it's so easy to read in terms of classics. My favorite classic is Little Women. However, I would recommend it for a beginner, but I feel like this one is just more beginner friendly, and that is, of course, The Hobbit. The Hobbit. This is, oh my gosh, so good. I also own multiple copies of The Hobbit. How do I explain The Hobbit? It's about a hobbit that goes on an adventure with, what are they? Oh, Bilbo Baggins, that's his name. Oh my gosh, this is bringing back so much memories. He sets off with some dwarves to go to this dragon to retrieve what was theirs, their treasure or something like that. But it's just like an adventure book, and it is the best adventure book ever. This is what all these adventure books are trying to be, but never will be. It's iconic. It's so good. I've reread this multiple times, which is saying something because, like I said, this is a classic. And it's so easy to read. Okay, guys, that is my little stack of beginner-friendly books that I would highly recommend to those just getting into reading. This makes me very happy. I love this idea. If you don't like any of these books, don't not read. Like, just pick up another book. I promise. There are so many books that I was recommended to as a beginner that I read and hated. A good one is We Were Liars. I still feel the fury of when I read that book, and it has been 3 years. So we have books that we hate. It's part of the journey. These are books that I read when I was beginning, or books that I just think are great for beginners. Not beginners, I don't like that word. Those getting into their reading journey, okay? If you have any thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments. I'm always up for a discussion, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!